We are back with another episode of the Walk On Red Shirts. I got my trusty fellow William here, and we have just watched College Football Playoff. It is Wednesday nights. We've had a couple days to digest it. Before we really get into that, William, what was your overall impression of bowl season this year?
I loved it. I mean, it's football almost every day. Even when I had to work, when I was in the doom and gloom of the holiday season, and you're still at work, don't want a bowl game. Have it playing in the background. It's so awesome to be able to just turn on college football and watch the Pop Tart Bowl at night. While you're putting together Christmas gifts, or the Boca Raton Bowl. Those bowls are elite. And honestly, yes, there was some of the controversial bowls, such as the Cotton Bowl with Ohio State and Missouri, or obviously the one that everyone's talking about, the Orange Bowl with Florida State having 29 people opting out, only one starter on defense. Like those, I think those are more of the anomalies than you might think. Most of the schools, I mean, it's still pretty important, and there's a lot of money on the line. And you got to think too, from the advertisers who are buying these sponsorships for these bowl games. They're not going to allow these opt outs to keep happening. But overall, if we come back to the question you asked, I thought it was great. I had one issue with bowl season, Jake. One big issue, and I'm going to pull the dad card. I'm a dad now of
Okay.
two. Humbly. Why on God's green earth would you put a college football playoff game at 9 o'clock at night?
Oh, that was brutal.
I was
That was
cooked.
absolutely brutal.
I
That
was
was
cooked.
brutal. 9 o'clock. The game's not getting over till 1 a.m. because it's gone long. It's 4 hours. There was commercials. Like, I understand you're not going to have them overlap, but here's my solution. At least pushes it up a little bit earlier. Um, you got to do them at 4 and 8, at
Yep.
least an hour earlier, because if I'm committing to an 8 o'clock game, I know I'm getting done at midnight. 9 o'clock, getting done at 1 a.m. I mean, I was almost useless on Tuesday because getting done at 1 a.m. and I got to be at work on Tuesday. Like,
Yeah.
it's just
That was
it's not
awful.
fun. Not fun at all. Like, just move all the earlier games up to noon. There was three
Uh,
bowl games on earlier. Put them all at noon. Right
yeah.
there at noon. There's nothing wrong with it. I understand Rose Bowl, whatever, but it's always started between 4 and 5. There's no reason you just can't play to 4.
So speaking of the Rose Bowl, there's a controversy going around, or a topic going around on X, and I think I'm all the way in on this. So Kirk Herbstreit saying the national championship should be played at the Rose Bowl every year. I'm kind of in on that, Jake. I don't know if that's a hot take, but I'm
So
kind of in on it.
I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. I would say the only thing I would do is I would rotate it between a couple locations. I would keep it between the Rose Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, maybe the Cotton Bowl,
Yeah.
and I could see the Orange Bowl as well. If you rotate between those four locations, I'd be in. Sell me. I'm good. I don't need the Fiesta Bowl. I don't need the Peach Bowl. Like, just go Rose, Cotton, Sugar, and Orange. That way, you're just rotating your locations. You can't just say that it's going to favor California or favor the West Coast teams. You can rotate between a bunch of those locations.
But how beautiful was that sunset going over the Coliseum while you're watching two smash mouth, hard nosed, old school football teams just go at it? I mean, that
How
was
sweet was the photo of the B-52 bomber from
that.
looking down at the stadium between the red and the blue section right on
Yeah,
the field? Oh my
with the
goodness. It
smoke,
was the
that
most
was
beautiful picture I've ever
inject
seen.
that in my veins. If that didn't have dumbass Alabama's logo in the end zone, that would have been my profile picture on everything.
Well, I'm not going to put Michigan's profile picture in anything
Yeah,
whatsoever. I can acknowledge it's a cool photo, but if that was like Ohio State Clemson, like that would have to be
that'd have been
our
perfect. That
new
would have been
logo.
yes, that would have been our logo for sure.
Would have been our logo if we could have done that.
What was your take on bowl season, Jake? You can't escape from this.
I mean, I really loved it. So the one thing is those first week of games are nice, but I really get into it after Christmas because then you start to get into some of those notable teams. I'll watch a game if it's starting to get close, but you see plenty of times where those might be blowouts earlier because you've got like a 9-3 team matched up with a 6-6, and it's just overpowered. Once you start getting the week after Christmas, that's when I start to really lock in. I start to watch a
Yeah,
bunch of those games, and they're enjoyable. They're fun to watch. I mean, Arizona versus Oklahoma was a good game. I didn't get to stay up to watch all of it because once again, they started super late. I went to bed at like the third quarter, but like it was a super fun game. Like it was cool to watch. I mean, if you acknowledge what bowl season is now, you can have a lot of fun with it if you
Oh yeah, for
understand
sure.
where you are with it, because it's no longer about the culmination of a season. It's more about previewing the next year. It's more of a combination, I guess, between both, because you have guys like Bo Nix that are still out there. They're playing their last game. But then Oklahoma, you got like Jackson Arnold out there who's making his first start. This is your future, your program right there. It's almost more of a combination of a postseason and a preseason game.
Yeah, well, and like the transfer portal thing, where the transfer portal happens before bowl season, and
Mhm.
you have to get in if you're trying to leave. And someone made a good point to me today, and I never thought about it this way. The reason the transfer portal is so early is because in order to transfer, you have to be able to enroll into the school.
Yep.
And if you're going to enroll to the school, there's an enrollee window. So that's why the transfer portal is so early. So they can't just change it, because they would have to change the clearinghouse for the school. And I'm like, I never even thought about that. I'm over here punching clouds and yelling at the sky, thinking that
You got school
they're
starting on
idiots.
Monday.
Yeah, that's absurd. So,
You're going to
well,
have first day of class next Monday, and you've got to have guys on campus. There's ways around it. You can have guys enroll in just second half semester classes, and there's ways to get around it, but it's just more inconvenient than anything. And it's convenient if you can get them in there on the first day of class,
yeah,
or
for
if you can
sure.
get them in there in the first week or two of class, because then like you don't got to worry about studies, you don't got to worry about GPAs, you don't got to worry about any of that other stuff. You can get them in there, and you can get them part of the team.
Hey, what did your
So
favorite Ohio State quarterback say famously?
we ain't
He
here to
didn't
play
come back
school.
then. There we go.
We ain't here to play school. He also beat a kid in the hospital when playing NCAA football, like 98-35.
Is that a true story?
It is.
Oh
It is.
God.
He actually put it out. Somebody put out there that it was 91-35, and he quoted it saying, "No, it was 98-35. I still had a minute left in the game."
I love Cardale Jones.
There's an article out there. It's really funny when he talks about it, and I think he just did another interview about it too, because it's actually really funny that he just beat this kid that it's like a Make-A-Wish trip, and he just beat this kid 98-35.
It's like no
Just
situation
ran it
ever.
up on him.
Yeah, well, and you wonder why he was able to ball out in the playoffs. The dude just competitive, like doesn't care
Dude
who's
just
across
knows
the
how to
room.
play. Dude just
Yeah,
knows how to play. Uh, so let's jump into the college football playoff. I want to start with the Rose Bowl, and Alabama and Michigan face off in the Rose Bowl Classic matchup. Uh, Michigan wins in overtime 27-20.
raise your
What
hand
was
if you knew Jalen Milroe was going to run the ball in overtime on fourth down. Yeah, if your
Everybody should
hands
be
up.
raising their hand.
Yeah, if you watched
Everybody and their brother should be raising their hand. That
Lord have
was
mercy.
well, when you go back and like watch the game and you go back and look at it, like they didn't really trust his arm that much. Like they threw it, but there was not many passes across the middle. It was a lot to the boundary. It was safe passes, and also he was given no time to
Yeah,
throw.
that's what
His
8
offensive
sacks.
line didn't give him any time.
Was it 8 sacks? Was that the final number? 9 sacks?
They
Like
had
it was.
5 in the first half.
Yeah.
I thought they were going to get to double digits, and they didn't quite get there.
Well, yeah. Well, they just took their out of the ball and ran it. They said, all right, we'll just see if we can out physical them, which they did a really good job. I mean, the Chase McClellan had a pretty good game, and then Jalen Milroe did a pretty good job. I mean, he had the fumble. Um, But I thought Alabama came out in the second half. Well, number one, let's back up a little bit, Jake. I thought Michigan should have been killing Alabama how they played in the first half. I
Yes.
mean, statistically, they were dominating them, and yet it was a 3-point game. And Michigan just kept shooting themselves in the foot. JJ McCarthy tried to throw a pick on the first drive of the game.
He desperately tried to, and Caleb Downs was about 3 inches away from having an interception.
Yeah, well, because he stepped out of bounds before he picked the ball off, right? Had he not
But
stepped out of bounds, it's a pick.
it was just his heel. If he stays 3 inches closer to the boundary, like that's a pick on the first play of the game.
3 inches is meaningful, people. Remember that.
It's always meaningful. And so one thing with this is I thought the game plan for Michigan the first couple drives was a little too aggressive compared to what they typically do. Like Michigan has been ground and pound all year long. You've got Blake Corum, you've got Donovan Edwards, you've been pounding the ball up the middle. The first drive, first play, they almost threw an interception. The second drive, or maybe it was the first drive still, they threw the ball 3 times. Like, I don't know why you would try to get too fancy. I know Harbaugh has these interesting plays. They ran that one reverse pass that was almost incredibly bad when whoever threw the lateral to JJ McCarthy nearly airmailed him. Like that was almost really, really bad where because that would have been a backwards pass, would have been out of bounds, would have been lost like 20 yards.
Yeah, that was, yeah.
Instead, they get a first down on it. And he throws a pass to Roman Wilson. It works out. But I looked at somebody went to watch that game and I said they should just stop trying trick plays because this is not going to work.
Well, Jake, it acted like they acted like they hadn't been there before. Like they acted like the moment was too big and that they were underdogs. I mean, you pull out all those trick plays when you don't have any other answer, and they were doing that in the first and second quarter. I mean, I was a little perplexed by that. I mean, like of course it's a big time game. Like you want to pull out the stops and you want to put it all on the line, but I felt like they went way too aggressive and aggressive to the point where it was out of character. They are aggressive by nature, but be aggressive. Be Michigan. They weren't Michigan in the first half, and I think like that could have cost them. They should have blown them out. And if they play like Michigan the whole game, maybe it's a whole different story.
Yeah, there was a lot of things that would have changed. Special teams was a massive issue for Michigan.
Yeah. Well, is that rust? Is that rust, or has Michigan struggled all year? I mean, I couldn't point to a time all year that Michigan's struggled with special teams, but
yeah, I don't know if it was rust. So there was definitely some anxious feelings there because the botched extra point, like that could have been vital. If Alabama would have won, you could have looked at that play alone because it was a tie game to overtime. Like that's just how the points rolled. That 1 point would have been different. Michigan misses a field goal. That's 4 points right there. They fumbled the ball on the first or second punt by Alabama, and that turns into a touchdown. They fumble the ball with less than a minute left on the punt, and they get the ball at the 1 yard line. They had to run the ball forward so they could sneak it. Like I don't understand the point. They called a timeout before that last play too. That didn't make any sense.
I didn't get it. I didn't get it at all. And I was like, there's obviously an error. Someone made a mistake because Alabama would have been the only person to call a timeout there. And no, yeah, but I don't want to drag Michigan the whole time. I know you love dragging Michigan, Jake. Michigan's defense showed up.
Michigan's defense did show up. Michigan defense was incredible. They ended up they actually ended only up with 6 sacks, as according to ESPN. 10 tackles for loss. Braden McGregor had 2 sacks. Michael Barrett, Josiah Stewart, Chris Jenkins, and Derek Moore each had 1 sack. I mean, they showed up. Alabama's offensive line was not ready for it, and Michigan's defensive line controlled that game.
Oh yeah, that's like Alabama's bread and butter is supposed to be their offensive line, but like looking back at it, Alabama has the 102nd. They're 122nd in the nation in sacks allowed. You can't be like that against Michigan. SEC my ass. Like you're playing against big old farm fed boys. Like these ain't like little fast guys that you can dominate. Like you're playing against guys. That's power on power. So they got exposed.
How about Harbaugh pushing all his chips in with about 3.5 minutes left, 4th down from his own 30-yard line, and saying, awesome. If I don't get this, we're not winning this game.
That was awesome. And you know what? That's the moments you look at when you go back and say, how did Michigan get to where they were? It's moments like that you remember. And that was huge, huge. What a play. And like, honestly, like JJ McCarthy, listen, Harbaugh, you're going a little crazy. He's not the best college football, the quarterback in college football. He's not the best college football quarterback in history. Like, let's relax. He threw 8 passes against Penn State. Let's remember that for a reason. But dude's a gamer. He's a gamer, and I respect the hell out of him. I mean, like, he just shows up and does everything in his power to make sure they win that game. And
it was a genius play call too. Genius play call, mesh route, like get your guys open. I always think, as a Clemson fan, you have to enjoy it because the route that you run, like a tight end or a running back into the flat, and you kind of run a clear out. It just seems like it works a lot. And I don't know why everybody doesn't run that as their go-to when you need 2 yards. Like, let's stop doing dumb plays. Let's figure out a way to get a guy open in the flat where he's open 2 yards. And as long as he falls forward, he gets it. They didn't need him to fall forward. He was well past the line.
Yeah. Well, and like I don't know if you saw, but the way that play was designed was genius. I mean, it's 4th and 2. What do you think Michigan's going to do? You think they're going to run? Blake Corum steps up as if he's running and then out. So
Mhm.
he's already drawn the linebacker out of position. It's man-to-man defense, and he's taken off knowing exactly where he's going. He's got 4 or 5 steps on him. I mean, easily a first down. And Blake Corum, hats off to him. Like that touchdown in overtime was unbelievable. The fact that he was able to stay on his feet, that was angels in the outfield esque. I mean, they were in Los Angeles, so that maybe that's what was actually happening. But how in the world he stayed on his feet, spinning around, getting tripped up, still ends up in the end zone. I mean, that was a power of wills.
Yes. Yeah.
But
Michigan
like,
Michigan played a great game. You got to tip your cap to them.
yeah, and like we can sit here and say, oh, Alabama lost it, yada yada. I think that's foolish. I think Alabama's weaknesses got exposed, and I think the fact that they were in there, everyone knew Alabama was very flawed. I mean, they almost lost to Auburn. They almost lost to USF. I mean,
They struggled a lot this year.
yeah, like they weren't the Alabama we're used to. What's funny is the Alabama we're not used to is still good enough to make the college football playoff in most years, but they didn't have anybody that stood out at receiver. I mean, Jermaine Burton is okay. I'm not very impressed with him. Jason McClellan is not the running back we're used to seeing at Alabama. Jalen Milroe is the running back you're used to seeing at Alabama, and it looked like that in the fourth quarter.
I'm surprised they didn't give Justice Haynes the ball a little bit more. He had a run at one point in the game where I want to say it went for like 15 yards. He only ended up with 4 carries. He seemed like he was a really good change of pace back. And I was surprised they only gave the ball 4 times because there were clearly times that they were struggling. But honestly, the thing that struggled with Alabama the most was the snaps, the center.
Yes.
You're throwing the timing off because now he's got to focus on where that ball is going every single time. And the announcers didn't do a really good job of explaining how important that was because there was one time where they said he should get that. That ball didn't go more than 2 feet behind the center before rolling.
Right.
I don't care how athletic Jalen Milroe is and is perceived. If that ball's not even getting off the ground and bouncing twice before he gets to him, he's setting himself up for failure already.
Well, and then so 2 things on that. Number 1, that's happening because Mason Graham was in his ass the whole game. They could not block Mason Graham. And when that starts to happen, you're trying to take your step before you've even snapped the ball. Your timing's off because you're nervous as a center. That's throwing everything off. So there's your snap problems right there, is when you're getting tore up by a defensive lineman. Number 2, Seth McLaughlin, I think his last name is now in the transfer.
Entered the portal today.
And one has to believe that he might have been maybe shown the door. You would hope not, but that kind of seems like the situation. Maybe they have somebody coming in that's better than him. I don't know. But and another thing I noticed, I don't know if you noticed this too, Jake. A lot of the times, the center was yelling at the guard next to him. I think it was 65. I forget his name, Booker. A bad snap would happen, and he'd look at the guard and start chewing him out. And I'm like, is there a silent count, or what is going on? Like, why is he yelling at him? Is he just not taking the blame? Like, that makes no sense to be yelling at everybody else when you're the one that's supposed to get the ball back there. So that was just one little thing I noticed that I was like, so they're in his head because that dude was rattled. He was yelling at everybody, couldn't get the snaps off. Tough. It's tough. It's tough to see an Alabama team play without fundamentals.
Yeah.
Oh, tough. I love seeing it.
Well, so let's move on to the Sugar Bowl. Sugar Bowl was another great game.
Great game, late game.
Didn't get over till 1 o'clock Eastern time. We need to change that. We need to get that done a little bit earlier. I don't care about you West Coast people. Sorry, Washington fans. 1 a.m. is a little too late for me.
Yeah,
I know that's plenty of time for you guys to celebrate afterwards, but let's talk about Michael Penix. That dude can spin it,
man. Like, so I saw someone comment on the game and said, no way he's able to do this again against Michigan, play a perfect game. You obviously haven't watched Michael Penix play the entire season.
That dude has incredible ball placement.
I mean, yes, I don't want to take away from Rome Odunze and Jalen McClellan and Jalen Polk. Michael Penix was handing the ball off essentially 30 yards down the field. He was putting perfect offense beats perfect defense. And if you want to know the proof to that saying, watch that game in which freaking Michael Penix is putting the ball directly in the guy's breadbasket 45 yards away with the dude playing perfect defense on him. It's like, man, that was phenomenal. And you know what? Michigan's calling card is defense. That's going to be pretty tough if Michael Penix is throwing the ball that way. That was phenomenal. I thought they ran the ball okay. I mean, Texas has the number 3 running defense in the country, so I knew they would struggle a little bit, but I thought they were able to expose them a little bit. But I was also pretty pleased with Washington's defense. I don't know about you, Jake. I mean, what was your opinion?
Yeah, so I thought Texas defense overall, I thought that they played okay, but we knew the Texas defense was going to be a potential liability.
Yeah,
and like, I don't necessarily know if they played that bad, but I think Michael Penix played that good.
Yeah, I agree. And I think he had something to prove. I mean, dude didn't win the Heisman. Maybe he should have. But
maybe he should have. That's honestly, that's a rant for another day. I understand the people that say you should give out the Heisman after the playoffs and after the championship, but like in no other sport, you give out the MVP after the World Series or after the Super Bowl. Like,
right.
This is based on the regular season, and just because somebody is a national champion, or else the quarterback of the national championship team would be the Heisman.
Correct. It's the fact that they'd win it every time, because that's bias.
Or it'd be when Ohio State won it, it'd be Zeke, because JT Barrett wasn't playing with Cardale Jones, and Zeke went on a monster run against Alabama and Oregon. But when you look at this, that's the rant for a different day. I'm not going to get into that. But Odunze and Polk, I thought, were incredible. Jalen McMillan scored a touchdown, was really good. But you saw early on when he hit Jalen Polk down deep for a 77-yard. I mean, he threw it 40-some yards in the air, and Polk did the rest. But I mean, he's just putting it in the right spot every single time. He hits a Odunze down the sideline, for 52 yards. You can't say enough good things about it. And Texas did not play well in the first half. Quinn Ewers put it together in the second half, tried to make a comeback. Almost got incredibly lucky because of some semantics and because of some rule changes. But really, Washington controlled this whole second half until about 5 minutes left.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I thought Trice did a really good job of putting pressure on Quinn Ewers, making it hard for him to do what we've seen him do all year. I think the offense obviously runs through Quinn Ewers on Texas, and the fact that they were able to score as many points as they were is mind-boggling, because they look clunky most of the night. I mean, I thought Whittingham played a pretty good game, but other than that, I wasn't really impressed. A.D. Mitchell, I can't ever say his first name, so I'm just going to keep calling him A.D. Sorry. I thought he looked really well. He mistimed the crap out of that jump ball, that fade route in the end zone.
He just was athletic enough to catch it.
Yeah, those people, I'm like, how do you stay in the air? Because you mistimed it. You should be coming down.
Dude was floating.
Yeah, and you just I'm just going to stay in the air for a little bit longer, and catches the ball. But I thought Washington's defense is, I think the word that's been used a lot is opportunistic. And that is the perfect word for them, because they're not the best in the world, but they make the plays when the plays matter. And the biggest play of the game was 4th down at the end, and they play perfect defense on the back end on a fade route where it has the guy, he might have him hooked a little bit, but that happens, and swats the ball away, game over. I mean, I thought that was phenomenal. I mean, they causing 2 fumbles in the fourth quarter. That's unbelievable. I mean, they were doing things. They were just making plays, and that's championship caliber stuff. They always say offense wins games, defense wins championships. Well, you've got a really good defense coming up next week, but your defense isn't awful. They get the job done. They're a bend but don't break defense, and I think that's the perfect matchup for Michigan. I don't want to get too far ahead. I keep going to that matchup.
I think Washington took their foot off the gas, and it nearly cost them, because they get the fumble after Texas moved the ball very fast, 4 plays, 60 yards, and then fumbles. They go 4 plays, 15 yards, and they tried to do a little trickery, try to get a little fancy, and it's go back to what works for you, because you're up 34-21. Any points at that point puts the game away, because it's a 3-score game at that point.
Yeah.
Any points puts the game away. Instead, they punt the ball. Texas goes down, scores a touchdown, makes a 6-point game. Washington kicks a field goal. And it almost got really, really interesting because of Dylan Johnson's injury.
Yeah, which is awful. I mean, apparently he's going to play, but
Mhm.
that you have to think he's not going to be 100%. I mean, you're trying to ice the
It's
game.
only 1 week. Only 1 week, and I don't know if there was a right way to do it. Your goal is to try to ice the game, but at the same time, like, do you just take a knee there and just like punt it? Like you already know you're probably punting. Like,
Yeah,
does taking a knee change it versus running the ball? Now that's a whole different discussion. But
yeah,
the fact that he got injured stopped the clock until
yeah,
the snap. Instead, there would have been 20 seconds left, but Quinn Ewers had about 50 seconds and a deep pass to Jordan Whittingham down the sideline. They were able to move that ball. It gave them a shot at the end zone because they're on the plus side of the field. They got really lucky with a couple different plays because they almost got caught in bounds still with less than 30 seconds left, which would have basically ended the game.
yeah.
They ran like a screen pass one time. I'm like, what are you doing? You've got like 20 seconds left. Is your goal to get like 2 yards here? Because you need to be either going for first downs or touchdowns.
Yeah, it's like sometimes the moment gets too big for these guys and they forget the basic fundamentals of what you're supposed to be doing in that time and like know the time, know the situation. Listen, it's great to get extra yards. Right now we're fighting the clock too. Get out of bounds.
Mhm.
Live to fight another day. Fourth down is not your enemy when you're on the 2-minute drill. You have to use your fourth downs, especially when you're in plus territory. Like fourth down is not your enemy. You're
Yeah.
going to go for it. Live with it.
Yeah.
Get out of bounds. Have that the clock stopping is way more important than a down a distance, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah. Anything else that you want to add about this game before we head on to the national championship?
I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but Michael Penix can really spin it.
I think I've heard that once or twice. He's
Yeah.
pretty darn good. 430 yards, 2 touchdowns.
I'm not going to say what I was going to say on Twitter this morning, but just know that it was a questionable tweet or excuse me, Tuesday morning that had to do with Michael Penix and how great of a passer he was. I'm going to leave it at that. Just know that I wanted to say something that was probably I was turned away from sending the tweet because it was too much. It was too much. But that's how I feel about his passes. So I'm gonna put that out there. Do with it what you may.
All right, let's jump into our national championship preview. Michigan versus Washington, number 1 versus number 2. I mean, really, you wouldn't want to have it any other way. Um, Arguably, 2 of the most consistent teams this year. I mean, Washington played a bunch of close games, but continued to win every single week. You got 2 13-0. I guess they're 14-0 now, aren't they? They're both 14-0
Yep, 14,
because they
both 14.
14-0. Winners going to be 15-0. And you've got talent on both sides of the ball. I mean, Washington's offense is going to be the best one that Michigan faces. Meanwhile, Michigan's defense is the best defense that Washington will have faced.
Right.
The opposite side of the ball, I don't really care about watching that one as much, but I think that one's going to be a major factor of how well does JJ McCarthy play against Washington's defense. I want to hear what your biggest key to this game is.
So I have 2. And both of them concern Washington. Obviously, I think Michigan's the favorite. I think they're favored by 4.5.
Yeah, it was about 4 points.
And I think, if you're thinking to go Washington, there's 2 big reasons why I would. Like, so why did Michigan beat Alabama? Well, they sacked the quarterback 6 times. I thought it was way more than 6. I'm going to say it's way more than 6, but per the law of the land, it was 6. Washington's 4th in the nation in sacks allowed. Alabama's 122nd. There's a big discrepancy. I don't think it's going to be that easy to get to Michael Penix. There's 2 reasons for that. Number 1, Michael Penix is a great passer. He gets the ball out of his hands quick. He's able to make his reads quickly, probably faster than Jalen Milroe. And number 2, their offensive line just has played very, very well. My second key to the game is Washington's not that bad at rush defense, and I think that's where Michigan's strength is on offense. So Washington's 40th in the nation in rush defense, which that doesn't sound great, but it's not terrible, and it's enough to get off the field, and it's enough to probably make Michigan pass in situations in which they wouldn't want to. Washington struggles in the pass, but I would like to see what JJ McCarthy can do in the passing game. If JJ McCarthy's able to complete passes to Rome Wilson down the field, all right, maybe this one gets out of hand, or maybe it turns into a shootout. But I think Washington's offensive line and Washington's defensive front that's playing the run are the 2 biggest keys in the game from the Washington side of the football for me.
Yeah, Washington's ability to protect Michael Penix is going to be absolutely vital because you see when he has time, those receivers are going to find a way to get open. I know Michigan has some really good DBs. Mike Sandstro, Will Johnson are both very good defensive backs. They're going to do their best, but I don't think they have seen. They played Ohio State, but Kyle McCord is not anywhere as good as Michael Penix. Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Ibuka are two very, very good wide receivers. Both will end up being first-round picks one day. Marvin Harrison probably sooner than Emeka Ibuka. But Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk, and Jalen McMillan are also incredible wide receivers. Rome Odunze is also going to be a first-round pick likely this year. McMillan and Polk, I don't know if they'll go pro, come back either way. Probably not first-round picks, but both incredibly talented guys. Polk became the number 2 wide receiver this year after McMillan went down for an injury, but McMillan is lethal. He's dangerous.
So
all
fast.
3 of those guys are lethal. Like, you cannot sleep on one of those guys because if you leave one open, Penix is going to find him. Penix knows how to go through his reads. So I think the thing is protecting Michael Penix. If you start to have to force him out of the pocket, he can move, but he is not a runner. He is not a guy who's looking to run the ball. And I think that sometimes is a misconception with him, but he is a very good pocket passer. Keeping it clean is going to be vital. The other thing I believe is going to be J.J. McCarthy. So I think it really comes down to the quarterbacks here, because if Washington finds a way to score points, so does Michigan. If Washington manages to get up, how does Michigan respond? Because a 13-play drive is going to kill the clock. They're going to kill the clock that way. Washington can score in about 45 seconds if they want to. They can just throw it up there. They can throw it up to one of their dudes, and they can make a play. So how does the quarterback play for J.J. McCarthy work? How does he elevate his game this week? We saw him have a really good game against Alabama. He threw 3 touchdowns. He's going to need to repeat that performance in order for Michigan to have a chance. The way I view this is Washington could blow out Michigan. I don't think Michigan can blow out Washington.
I agree with that.
Just because of the styles of play. If Michigan gets up, they're going to burn the clock away. If Michigan gets up 2 touchdowns, they're going to burn the clock away and just let it go. But Washington could turn 1 or 2 mistakes into 14 or 17 points.
Yeah, you can't muff a punt against Washington. You can't turn the ball over against Washington. They're going to make you pay. And what I wanted to come back to this, Texas played great defense. So, Michigan's calling card is defense. And Texas played great defense in the back end, I thought. Like, there was a lot of the big-time throws that Penix was making. Like, they were covered very well. The touchdown to Jalen Polk, the ball's tipped or almost tipped and pops up in the air. He catches it for a touchdown. The 2 Rome Odunze catches, the guy's draped on him, and Michael Penix just puts it in the perfect spot. And then obviously Rome Odunze makes a play. So it's like, yeah, Michigan, you might be really good at defense, but Washington is really, really good at offense. I mean, I am so excited to see these 2 teams go at it. I mean, Jake, this is probably one of the more exciting college football championships that have happened in a long time. There's 2 different teams. We haven't seen either of these teams in the national championship for the college football playoff era, and we also haven't seen these 2 teams in the national championship in the last 30 years, I believe. I think Washington won it in the 90s, and I can't remember the last time Michigan won it.
Michigan got a share of it with Charles Woodson in 97. Hasn't won it outright since, I believe, 48.
Okay, so both of these teams haven't been in the national championship since the 90s. I mean, especially if you talk about the BCS era, the college football playoff era.
The crazy part is they're going to play again in 9 months.
I know, that's insane. They're about to be in the same conference.
They're about to be conference foes next year.
And there's going to be some bad blood in that game.
Ten.
Let me tell you.
Big Ten. Actually, I hate when people do that. I just think it's funny to be sitting here chanting Big Ten when Washington's still a Pac-12 member.
Well, real quick, sidebar, does Washington's offense get worse because they're joining the Big Ten? Does that happen?
Yes, you're legally obligated to have a worse offense.
Yeah, you can't score more than 30, right?
You're not allowed to. You're not allowed to unless you have Urban Meyer as your head coach.
Okay. But key players for this game, Jake, that I'm really excited to see is obviously Brooks, the running back for Washington. if they can't run the ball, Michigan's able to pin their ears back and get after them. That's going to be tough. That's going to be really tough for that Washington offense. Yes, they're a great offense, but if you can't run the football or at least keep a defense honest, that's going to be tough. So if he's hurt, yeah, it could be a slow game. But then on the other side of the ball, Mason Graham, is he able to have that same type of game that he had against Alabama, against a more stout, more gelled senior veteran offensive line that Washington has? I don't know. And then in the back end, Will Johnson, one of the best defensive backs in the country, he's got his hands full because you can shadow Rome Odunze. You're going to have your hands full. You could just go with whoever comes to your side of the field, whether it be Jalen McClellan or Jalen Polk or Rome Odunze. You're going to have your hands full. He's going to have a tough game, but I think he's a guy that can make a difference. And depending on where he goes, you're going to see. I don't think you see Michael Penix go his way very often. Jump on the other side. I'm forgetting the safety's name for Washington. He's number 7. It'll come in my head. Dominique Hampton. I thought he had a phenomenal game against Texas, and I think the easy thing, if you're going to talk about Washington's defense, is Braylon Trice. I want to move away from that. I think a key player is going to be Dominique Hampton. When you have a safety, especially like him, he's the strong safety, so he's going to be coming up in the box. He's going to have to come up, make run, come up, make tackles. In the closer to the line of scrimmage, and he's going to have to also play the pass. If they're going to put Michigan in long down and distances, a lot of this is going to come down to Dominique Hampton. Is he aware? Is he playing a good game? Is he able to get over the top and make sure that Roman Wilson isn't able to beat that Washington defense? I'm very excited to watch this game, Jake. And those 4 players, I think, are key if you're going away from the traditional quarterback with J.J. McCarthy and Michael Penix.
Yeah, so Braylon Trice is going to be one of my guys. I don't care if he's the easy answer. He had 2 sacks against Texas, forced fumble, 3 tackles for loss, like that, a monster game, absolute game wrecker. I think another guy to look after would be Jamar Muhammad. He is a cornerback for Washington. He leads their team in passes defended with 15, and he's actually had a really good year so far, especially the last couple games. He had 3 against Texas. He actually leads the team in interceptions too with 3. So the guy can play the ball, and Michigan's wide receivers are not as lethal as most of the other. Honestly, like even if you compare the top 25, their receivers are not incredible. Why am I blanking on their top receiver? Roman Wilson.
Yeah,
Roman Wilson. Obviously, he's a name that is very common. People know who he is because he's been there for 5 years. They've got a couple other guys that are okay,
Roman
but
Wilson
their tight ends are
going to.
Goodness. Their tight ends are going to be more important, honestly.
For sure.
When you go and look at that, J.J. McCarthy has relied on the tight ends plenty this year. And I think he relies heavily on the tight ends again because, like, everybody knows that they're going to throw the ball or they're going to run the ball. Colston Loveland is one of the best tight ends in the country. He was second on the team in receiving yards, had 42 catches, 4 touchdowns. AJ Barner is another guy to watch out for. Like, he's another one. One thing I'll be interested to see if they do is, do they put their backup quarterback in again? Do they put Alex Orji in again after him nearly costing Michigan some serious yards? Because they put him in, they let him throw the ball, and he kept running to the sideline. And instead of throwing the ball away, he ran out of bounds and lost 3 yards. Like, when you get in the national championship, you just can't do that.
Listen,
you can't have that kind of mistake.
You can't have the name like him and be conservative. There's not a conservative out there that has that last name. No. So whenever you're an orgy on the football field, you're not going to do what's right all the time. You're going to do some crazy stuff. That's what orgies do. That's what orgy does.
So I'll be interested to see if they put Alex Orji out there again. Personally, I don't think I would. I would not put him out there. I would keep JJ McCarthy out there every play. I understand the change of pace, but if you want to go into a wildcat formation, I would put Blake Corum or Donovan Edwards back there. Donovan Edwards, surprisingly, he played. He's just only getting like 5 snaps a game. Like, yeah, I don't know what it is, but Blake Corum more than doubled his snaps this year. and Blake Corum scored 25 touchdowns. Donovan Edwards has scored 3. Donovan Edwards has been the receiving back. Donovan Edwards has more than twice the amount of receiving yards that Blake Corum does. So when he's coming in, there's a better chance he's going to get the ball in the receiving game. But yeah, I thought with how Donovan Edwards finished out the year last year that he would get significantly more playing time.
Yeah, I mean, there was talks that he was the better running back in general and probably one of the better running backs in the country. So the fact that, I mean, he's been absent. So that was a little strange to me, but it worked out for him.
Absolutely. So what is something that you're looking for in this game? What is something you want to watch for?
Number one, I want to watch Michael Penix throw a deep ball.
Watch him spin that because it's the last time we get to watch him do it in college. I don't
Yeah.
think he has found another year of eligibility. If he does, by all means, you can transfer to Ohio State.
Yep. No, but something I really want to watch for, again, I'm going to go back to the trenches, being a trenches guy. I want to see that matchup. I want to see Washington's offensive line versus Michigan's defensive line. I think that's where the game is going to be won for either team. If Washington's able to hold Michigan's defensive line at bay, they're going to win the game. I mean, if you're not putting pressure on Michael Penix, he's not going to make mistakes, and he's just going to dice you up. And vice versa. If they're able to be in and Penix the whole game, like it's going to be a long day for Washington. So I'm really looking to see that battle of offensive line versus defensive line between those two teams.
So I'm going to go on the opposite side of that though, because I think the key is Washington's front seven against the rushing attack. JJ McCarthy is a gamer, but you see that there are limitations with his arm, that he is talented. He's mobile. His accuracy isn't always there, especially when he starts throwing the ball more than, 8-10 yards. I mean, there were a couple plays where he screwed the play up because of where his ball placement was. There was a play, I forget where it was, second or third quarter, where he hit his receiver across the middle, and he actually hit him in stride, but it was behind. So the receiver had to slow down and actually adjust to catch it behind him when it was only an 8-yard pass downfield. But because of that, they didn't get the first down, had to punt the ball away.
That's the difference in the games, guys. Like it is a game of inches. Like, completing a pass behind your guy as opposed to in front of your guy is huge. I mean, it's the difference between
if he completes that pass in front of him, the receiver gets an extra 5-8 yards, gets a first down, drive keeps moving.
It's huge.
It's huge. It's going to be vital if JJ McCarthy gets put in third and long situations where he has to throw the ball, where they're throwing the ball. Granted, he could scramble and he could go for it, but if he has to throw the ball and is kept in the pocket, I don't know if I have the confidence in him being able to complete attempt 30, 35 passes in a game.
I think that's your blowout scenario. If they keep JJ McCarthy in the pocket and he has to pass 30 times, they've been blown out.
I 100% agree. JJ McCarthy needs to be under 25 passes in the game. I think he finished with like 28, but I mean, the game went to overtime, and there were a couple other situations in there that they had to throw the ball, but it was also an incredibly close game. If he threw 27 times, 17 of 27. If he's throwing more than 30 times in this game, it means it's high scoring, and I just don't like Michigan in a high scoring matchup here.
Well, look, I mean, they almost lost, and he threw 27 times. 3 more passes, it's over.
You saw him against Penn State earlier this year. He didn't even need to throw the ball in the second half because they were so dominant in the run game.
Yeah.
What is a bold prediction you have for this game?
Bold prediction. This is tough. I've been rattling this one in my head a few times, but my bold prediction comes back to our boy, Big Penix. I think he throws for 300 yards. I think he throws for over 300 yards on this Michigan defense, and I think that's pretty bold, stating how good this defense is. But I just think he's able to do it.
I am going to go with Blake Corum having less than 75 yards.
Oh, whoa. Okay. I'll elaborate. I want to hear more about this.
I think Washington gets up early because Kalen DeBoer is going to have something up his sleeve. I think Harbaugh is going to have stuff up his sleeve too. I think this could also be a game where they realize that it's time to unleash Donovan Edwards. You've had him the whole time. Maybe it's blind faith that they finally use him and just the powerful back he is. But I think that there is a little bit of a different mindset coming into the national championship game. The way Michigan celebrated that Rose Bowl game, it looked like they won a national championship.
Yes.
It honestly struck as like, we've done it. It's over.
Right.
I think they try to get too cute during this game. I think that they try to overthink it. I mean, you saw them do it in the very beginning of the game against Alabama. They throw on the very first play and almost throw an interception.
Yeah.
They tried to run some of the trick plays. Too many trick plays were run over the weekend. My goodness. In the college football playoff, there were way too many trick plays. My favorite thing to tweet when that happens is hickory dickory. We got some trickery.
I love that. Is that from that like Montana D3 coach?
I have no idea. I saw it on a video once and I was like, I'm stealing this.
I'll have to send you this guy. This dude he's the most quotable coach of all time. And I think he coaches is either in Montana or in one of the Dakotas at like a D2 or a D3 football school. And it is phenomenal, Jake. If you haven't seen this guy, let me get this information to you. This will change your life.
Good to know. But yeah, so I think that they get a little bit interesting. I think Donovan Edwards sees the ball a little bit more. And I think Washington gets out to an early lead, forcing them to start throwing the ball. And like I said, Donovan Edwards was the receiving back, which might mean he has to play a little bit more if they're going to use him out of the backfield like that. All right. The time has come. We both have already submitted our predictions in our group message, in our Slack group. So I already know what you're picking, and you already know what I'm picking, but we need to tell everybody else what we're picking. And shockingly, we actually picked the same score, but you adjusted because I submitted my score first.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm glad I adjusted. I think there's going to be something wacky. I think Michigan's going to go for 2 or something, and I have the final score: Washington 31, Michigan 26. Some hater took the 27 from me, so 26 is what I wanted anyway. So joke's on you. But yeah, 31-26 Washington. I think Michael Penix is too much. I think he throws for 300 yards, like I said earlier. I think they're able to establish a decent enough run game to get them in good situations, and I think their offense is just too much for Michigan. You know, I wasn't that impressed with Alabama all year anyway. Maybe they were the 4th best team in the country. Maybe they weren't. That's still up for debate. But I don't think that was Michigan's hardest test. It took them to overtime. I think this team's better than Alabama, and I think we're going to find out. 31-26 Washington. Go Huskies.
If you want to know the score Will did one, it was 31-27, which is what I submitted because I was the first one to submit my score. But I think Michael Penix, like, this is a legacy game for him. He has played great over the last 2 years. Going back to his time at Indiana, there were flashes. You put him in a really good offense that suits his skills, talented playmakers around him. I think Washington's defense does enough. Michigan has to clean up their special teams. Sure. I think there is 1 or 2 crucial mistakes that happen in this game. I don't necessarily think they're turnovers, but I could see crucial mistakes happening with a bad play call, with a bad snap, something along the lines of that sets Michigan back from winning this game.
Yeah, an overthrow,
a guy that's clearly open, and McCarthy airmails him by 5 yards.
Yeah.
A play where, it's 3rd down and long, he hits them behind, has to readjust, and he falls 4 yards short. But if he hits him in stride, he would have gotten the first down by 3 yards. Something along the lines of that. Just a preview of what everybody else said. A couple of other scores was 28-27 Washington, 27-21 Michigan, 31-24 Washington, Michigan 27, Washington 23, and then Washington 31, Michigan 31. And then the bold prediction of somebody saying Rome Odunze, 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now that is spicy.
I like it.
That is spicy.
Rome wasn't built in a day. It was built in 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. Quick question, Jake. Do you think there might be some bias in the Slack group with the amount of Ohio State lovers we have?
So
Actually,
I
we
was
don't
the
have
only
that
Ohio
many.
State fan that even responded so far. The other Ohio State fans haven't responded yet.
You're right. You're right. Because we got what? Miami, Florida State, Penn State, Clemson, whoever
Georgia,
this guy is probably a
Northwestern.
genius. Northwestern and Georgia. Yeah. So never mind. Let me take a step back. I'm sorry. I got a little ahead of myself.
Is there a Michigan bias because of everything that's happened this year? Yeah, I think there is a little bit of
Absolutely.
Michigan bias because of that. Did you see Connor Stallions was at the Rose Bowl?
Of course he was. Of course he was. And I bet Uncle T or whatever the guy's name was is the one who paid for him to go.
No, Chase Winovich was.
Chase Winovich paid for him to go.
Chase Winovich was sitting with him, or at least took the picture with him.
That's hilarious. That is
I have a take on this, and I read it online. He is clearly a Michigan fan, and he clearly wants to be there. But as much of a Michigan fan he is, this is actually a negative thing because he's just drawing attention to himself once again. Like if he was really that big of a Michigan fan and he really was supporting, why would you put yourself back in the spotlight as they're playing? Technically he didn't, but I'm sure that Winovich gave him the okay to do it.
Yeah.
He was clearly smiling and fine with being posted on Chase Winovich's Instagram story.
That's true. Yeah. It's kind of like he's taunting everybody. Like
he is. He 100% is. He is 100% throwing it in the NCAA's face and throwing it in the fans' face, saying, "Yep, I did it, but guess what? I'm still here."
This is probably part of his manifesto. I haven't gotten to that page yet.
100%. Oh yeah. It's you got to keep going. Got to keep going to the manifesto.
Yeah.
All right, we got one question this week. I'll check Twitter again before going and signing off, but it's from our friend Jake Thigpen. Who has the edge Monday night, Michigan's defense or Washington's offense?
Wait, Jake, realize that we haven't discussed yet. Sorry, Jake Thigpen. This is really important. I have to put it out there. We're watching a big block W versus a big block M. I mean, they're essentially just the inverse of each other.
I saw somebody do the SpongeBob meme of you had it on Mega. You got to switch it to Wumbo.
That's pretty good. I was in the shower this morning, and that thought crossed my mind. I'm like, oh wow, this is pretty cool. It's not really that cool. That tells you how simple my mind is. But anyway, Jake Thigpen, great question. I think I kind of alluded to it earlier. I think Washington's offense has the edge over Michigan's defense, and the only reason I say that is how polished and how many weapons there are on Washington's offense. I mean, when you have three different guys who are all top, could probably be a top receiver at different parts of the country on the same offense with a Heisman finalist quarterback, like I just think that's too much for Michigan's defense. I mean, Michigan defense has some dudes, but I just don't think it's enough to stop Washington's offense. So I think Washington's offense has the edge. That's essentially the matchup right there. Michigan's defense, Washington's offense. I mean, we're strength on strength.
Yeah. I really like Washington's offense, and it's really the receiving core and Michael Penix. Just watching him all year and watching him throw a deep ball, incredible. Love watching it. I think Michigan's got a really good defense, but I think Washington's offensive line is somehow underrated because everybody knows how good Michigan's offensive line is. Washington's offensive line won the Joe Moore Award given to the best offensive line in the country. Yeah. So they are very, very talented. So I that's something to keep an eye on. Well, that brings us to the end of the show. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for keeping up. We will definitely have a recap episode of the national championship game coming out sometime here after the championship game is over.
No pie episode.
Make sure.
No pie episode.
No pie episode. Sorry. Not everybody got you to 300. We'll get there. We'll get there soon enough.
We topped out. We made it a far way. We went from 100 to 252 in a month. So I thought that was pretty good progress.
Yeah, we're definitely on the up and up. I looked the other day, asked to get to 7,000. We're at 7,300 already. Goal is to get to 10,000 this year.
Nice.
Goal is to get to 10,000. So make sure to go follow us on social media. You can follow Will at Walk On Moose. You can follow me at Walk On Red Shirts. We're on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, all sorts of platforms. Make sure to go follow us anywhere, Facebook. Make sure to like and rate and subscribe to the podcast. It helps us out. Apple, Spotify, wherever you're at. share it with your friends. We're going to head into college football off season, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to have content. Not every week, but we will still continue to have college football content throughout the off season. Life just happens in the off season. That's when you take care of all your personal business. You got to take care of all your stuff in the off season. You can't do that stuff during the season.
Marshawn Lynch got it right. Take care of your mentals. Take care of your chickens. This is the mentals and chicken season.
Absolutely. So with that being said, thank you again for joining all of us, and we will talk to you again after the national championship game.